discuss in the further slides, we will be discussing various operations on the vectors. So, how do you apply addition, subtraction, then the scalar product of the vectors, how do you multiply a scalar to the given vector, then what is inner product, outer product. So, let us discuss all these things. So, now let us start with a simple thing, that is addition and subtraction of two vectors. So, addition and subtraction of two vectors. So, for example, so A is a vector in the two-dimensional space and B is another vector in two-dimensional space. So, remember, to apply addition and subtraction, so the vectors must be of the same dimensions. Then only you can apply addition or subtraction, otherwise you cannot. So, here in this case both are in the same dimension. So, that is how they are compatible, and I am applying the addition of the two vectors. So, how do you do the addition of the vectors? So, just simply you need to add the corresponding elements of these two vectors. So, x1 and x2, these two are added together and that makes the first element of the first vector of the resultant vector. And now y1 and y2, so you just add them up, these values, that is simply a scalar addition only. So, when you take the corresponding elements, apply the scalar addition and that forms each element of your new resultant vector addition. And similarly, if you consider the subtraction, so take the corresponding elements and simply apply the scalar subtraction. So, that gives the resultant subtraction of the vectors. So, now see graphically, so what vector addition is. So, consider this, now consider this vector A, it is moving this direction and that is a magnitude, and now I have this vector B. So, how do I apply vector addition is, so for I want to apply A plus B. So, I need to place the initial end of the vector B, this is the end, right. So, this is the initial end of the vector B. So, I should position these two vectors such that the initial vector of B is like placed at the terminal end of the vector A. So, now I placed it such that the initial end of B is placed at the terminal end of A. So, now the difference between these two vectors, the new vector that is having the initial position at the initial position of A and the terminal position of B. So, it is a new vector, right, in the two-dimensional representation. So, that gives me the addition of these two vectors. So, that is how you can represent the addition of two vectors. And now consider the subtraction of the two vectors. So, here I am going to subtract A and B. So, simply I can convert that to the addition itself, right. So, after all, an addition of A and minus B, and if B is the given vector, how do I get minus B? So, it is just with the same magnitude with a reverse direction. So, this is how B and minus B are represented. So, given the vector B, you just get the minus B by changing its direction. So, now I have A and minus B. So, now what is the subtraction of A and B? A minus B, right. So, A minus B I can simply write it as, so A plus minus B, and I have minus B vector, and we know how to apply addition of two vectors, right, we just discussed. So, that is how you can get the subtraction of any two given vectors. And now let us see what the scalar product, how do you multiply a scalar to the given vector. So, now consider this is the scalar, now consider this is the vector which is in the n dimensional space. Now, consider this vector in the n dimensional space. So, now I am going to apply scalar multiplication. So, let us consider A as a scalar and x, we already know it is a vector. So, we represent this as a scalar product Ax, and we can represent it like this, A into, so you just multiply this vector, and how do you get the result is, so you just multiply this scalar with every element of this vector. So, A into x1, A into x2, A into x3, so on and so forth, A into xn. So, simply you are applying the scalar multiplication of A with every element, every individual element of the vector, and that results in the scalar product. And now, so let us consider what happens when you apply the scalar product. So, this is your V, and depending on your value A, so your magnitude of the vector will change. So, if you observe, this is your AV. So, this is the given vector V, and AV is this vector. So that means when you apply the scalar product, depending on the value of A, the magnitude of the vector changes. So the direction of the vector will not change, and as long as the value of A is positive, the magnitude will not change. If it is negative, then the resultant vector will be exactly in the reverse direction. So let's have that examples. So consider this is the given vector A. So now, if 2 is the scalar and A is the vector, so 2A is this vector. So if you observe, no, so the magnitude of the vector is doubled because you are multiplying with 2. So that's how your magnitude of the vector changes when you apply scalar multiplication. So now consider minus 1 is your scalar. Minus A means it's nothing but you are multiplying with minus 1, right? So it's a scalar product of minus with your vector. So in that case, if A is this, so your minus A is this. So the magnitude will not change because it's only 1. Your scalar is 1, but because it's a minus sign, so your direction of the vector will change exactly in the opposite direction if you observe. So if it is in this direction, exactly 180 degrees in the other direction, so it goes. Otherwise the magnitude will not change here because you are multiplying with the value 1. That is how, depending on the value of the scalar you are multiplying, so the magnitude of the vector changes and the direction will not change as long as your scalar is a positive value. When you are multiplying with a negative value, then the vector will be exactly moving in the opposite direction. And consider this, so if this is A and this is how you can represent 2A where the magnitude is exactly doubled, and so if your scalar is 0.5, so A into 0.5, so here your magnitude of the vector is halved. So in these two cases the scalar is positive, so the direction is in the same, it's not changed, right? And the magnitude here in this case, because the scalar is 2 and it's double, here in this case the scalar is 0.5, so it's half of the original magnitude. So that is how you can apply the scalar product. So now let's see how do we multiply a matrix to the given vector. So you can do either way. So like a vector can be multiplied with a matrix and a matrix can be multiplied with a vector also. So in this case I have taken, so the matrix will be multiplied with the vector. So the resultant value will be a scalar. So remember, so when you multiply a scalar with a vector, the result will be a scalar only. And in this case, when you multiply a vector with a matrix, the resultant will be a vector itself. Okay. And how do we multiply is, so consider the first row of the matrix, and the first row matrix elements will be multiplied with the vector, the corresponding elements will be multiplied and then they are summed up, and that is how I get this first element of the resultant vector. So that is 2 into 1 plus 1 into 0 plus 2 into 1. So altogether that results in the first element of your resultant vector. And similarly the second element, how do I get? So 3 into 1 plus 2 into 0 plus 3 into 0. So here you can write it as, it's 3 into 1 plus 2 into 0 plus 3 into 1. So that is the second element. And similarly the third element. And if you observe, so the result, what is the result? Result is a vector itself. So 2 into 1, 2 plus 0 plus 2, it is 4. And the second element, so 3 plus 3, it is 6. And similarly, so the last element is 4 plus 1, it is 5. So it's a vector. So that is how you can multiply a matrix with a vector. But you should remember that, so the number of columns here must be equal to, so the size of your vector. So the size, there should be compatible in size, otherwise you cannot. Say for example, if it is of size m by n size, and your vector is always represented as n by 1 as long it is column vector. So now this, these two sizes must be of the same. So then only they are compatible for multiplication, otherwise they are not. And you can even proceed in the other direction also. So like a vector can be multiplied with a matrix also. So in that case your vector will be of 1 by n size and your matrix is of m by n size. So if your m and n, these two dimensions are equal, then only you can proceed with the a vector multiplication with the matrix. So that is how you can multiply a vector and a matrix. Remember, the resultant is a matrix, the resultant is a vector itself. Now let's see, so what is the inner product of the vectors? So far we have seen how do you multiply how do you multiply a scalar with the vector and a matrix with the vector. So now how do we multiply two different vectors? So given x and y as the vectors, how do we multiply them? And when you multiply two different vectors, consider x and y as two vectors. So here this is x, which is in n dimensional space, and y, which is also size n dimensional. So both should be in the n dimensional space. Then only that n can be any value, but they should be compatible in the size. So then only you can apply the inner product, or you can apply multiplication on those two vectors. So simply this kind of vector multiplication is called as inner product of vectors, that's called as outer product. So now let's see what inner product is. So given the vector x and the vector y, so we represent that with x transpose y, and basically x is a vector, right? So x and y are two vectors. So this is what x is and this is what y is. So instead of directly multiplying, what I am doing is, so apply transpose on x. So the x transpose is this. That's why I am representing that as a row, and then I take the vector y as it is. So I multiply these two. So this row vector with this column vector, and then the resultant will be a scalar. When I apply the inner product, the resultant of the product of two vectors, if I apply inner product, it's a scalar value. And how do I get the scalar value is, you just apply the multiplication of the corresponding elements, simple scalar multiplication of the corresponding elements, that is x1 into y1 plus x2 into it should be y2. So x2 into y2, so on and so forth, xn into yn. So you just sum them up, all the individual scalar multiplications. So that gives me the scalar, and that is the result of the inner product of the given two vectors. And what does it give me is the direction relationship between the two vectors. So in which direction they are in. So what is the relationship between these two vectors is. So that kind of relationship can be interpreted when you get the inner product of these two vectors. So we'll discuss that in detail in the next few seconds. So let's see some other details. So the inner product of two vectors is a scalar value, and I have an example for you. So let's consider this as, now let's consider vector x and vector y, both are in the two dimensional space, and I am going to apply inner product of these two vectors. So basically x transpose y, that is x has to be transposed, right? So I am transposing x, that's why. So the transpose of this is minus 1, 3 as a row. So just apply the corresponding element multiplication. So minus 1 into 2 plus 3 into 5. So that results in 1. So the inner product of the given two vectors minus 1, 3 and 2, 5 is 1. So that is how you can apply the inner product of the vectors, and inner product of the vectors gives the direction relationship of the vectors x and y. So how they are, what is the relationship between these two vectors. So let's see some more details of this inner product. So before that, let's try to understand what cosine similarity is. So cosine similarity between, or the angle between two vectors can be computed with, so this cos theta, cosine similarity gives the angle between the two given vectors x and y. So here cos theta, this can be computed as cos theta equal to x transpose y, which is equal to the inner product of the vectors, and remember this is the norm of the vector. So we'll discuss shortly what the norm of the vector is. So norm of the vector is always represented with pipeline symbols. So norm of the x into norm of y in the denominator, and in the numerator it's x transpose y, which is the inner product of the two vectors x and y. So cos theta can be computed using this formula. So now that is how we can get the angle between the two vectors. So this angle between the two vectors gives some interesting relationships between the vectors. So now consider if the cos theta value is 0. So if cos theta value is 0 means, so you can simply say that, so cos theta is what? It's x transpose y by norm of x into norm of y is 0. So this, from this I can simply write it as x transpose y equal to 0. Is it not? So now x transpose y is 0. So x transpose y is 0 means what? So the vectors are orthogonal to each other. So if you observe, the angle between these two vectors is 90 degrees. So when the cos theta value is 0, so for what value of theta cos theta is 0? So it is cos 90 is 0, right? So that means the angle between these two vectors is 90 degrees. So we call them as if the angle between the two vectors is 90 degrees, you can say that the inner product between these two vectors is 0 and they are called as orthogonal vectors. So there are some interesting properties for these vectors. That's why we are more interested on this orthogonal vectors. So the x and y are the orthogonal vectors. When cos theta is 0, that implies that x transpose y, that is the inner product, is 0. That means the two vectors are orthogonal to each other. So now let's see what happens when cos theta is 1. So cos theta 1 is what? So in that case you can simply write your x transpose y by your norm of x into norm of y can be equal to 1, right? So cos theta is 1. That means I can replace this with 1. So this is equated to 1. So in that case, can I write it as x transpose y equal to norm of x into norm of y, right? So that's what I have written here. And in this case, for what values of cos theta it can be 1? So in that case, so your x transpose y is always greater than 0. So x transpose y is greater than 0 means they are moving in the same direction. So whenever your inner product of the two vectors is greater than 0, then that is an indication that they are moving exactly in the same direction. Of course, their magnitude can be different. And now consider the other case when your cos theta is minus 1. When your cos theta is minus 1, so that means the theta value is 180 degrees, right? So the theta value is 180 degrees. And from this I can write it as x transpose y by norm of x into norm of y, it can be equated to minus 1. And simply from that I can say that x transpose y equal to negation of norm of x into norm of y, and which is always less than 0. So in this case I can say that, so the angle between these two vectors is 180 degrees. That means the inner product of the two vectors is negative value. In that case I can say that they are exactly moving in the opposite directions. So that is how the inner product between the two vectors gives the relationship between the two vectors. Now we have seen product of vectors. So I already explained. So vectors can be multiplied in two different ways. So whatever we have seen is the inner product of the vectors. So you are just applying the product of two vectors and you are getting a scalar. In that case that is called as the inner product. And now let us see what the outer product is. So in this case x and y are two vectors again, but instead of taking the transpose of the x as it is in the case of the inner product, we will be taking the transpose of y and then we will be multiplying, similar to how we multiply the matrices. So the same way we apply here. So now this is the vector x which is of m dimensional space. So here you can remember that, so the vector size need not to be compatible. So they can be of different dimensionals also. So here x is a vector of size m and y is a vector of size n, and the outer product results in a matrix of size m by n. So this is the matrix that is the resultant of the outer product of two vectors. So in this case, so given the n dimensional vector, so I am applying transpose on y. So that is how I am taking the row vector for the y. So now how do we get the result? So you just multiply the corresponding elements. So x1 into y1. So if these two are multiplied together, and that is how the first row of the first element is formed for the resultant vectors. So similarly x1 is multiplied with y2 and that forms the second element of the first row of your matrix, and so on and so forth. So you are all familiar with the matrix multiplication. The same way however we are doing the matrix multiplication. So here you can consider it as a column matrix and here you can consider it as one dimensional matrix with a single row. So you are applying the matrix multiplication and the resultant is a matrix which is of size m by n. And let us consider an example. So here, so consider this example, x equal to minus 1 3, y equal to 2, 5. So these two are the vectors in two-dimensional space. I will be applying the outer product on these two vectors. So how do I get that? So on y you need to apply the transpose. So here I get the transpose of the vector y. So 2, 5 is a column vector, here it is a row vector, and when I apply the outer product, how do I get? So minus 1 into 2, so that forms this element, and minus 1 into 5, that forms this element, and similarly 3 into 2 I get this, so 3 into 5 I get this. So now it is a 2 by 2 matrix. So I said, so if it is x is of m dimensional and y is of n dimensional, the resultant is of size m by n. And what is the size of x here? It is in 2 dimensional. So your m value is 2 and y is of size n dimension and n is of size 2. And in that case your resultant is m by n. That is, the resultant is a matrix of size 2 by 2. So that is how I get a 2 by 2 matrix out of it. So that is how you can compute outer product of the vectors. Now let us see how do you find the norm of a given vector. So for example, I am given a number 5 and I am given a number 7. So which is a bigger one? I can say that, so 5 is less than 7, right? So say for example, I am given 2 and 5. So how do you compare these two numbers? So I can simply say that 2 is or 20 and 5. So 20 is greater than 5 because they are scalars. I can very well compare these two numbers, right? But so how do I compare the compare the vectors? You had to compute the magnitude, right? So before comparison of the matrices, so you should compute the magnitude of the vectors. So how do you compare the magnitude of the vectors is with the help of the norm. So norm is the one which allows you to compute the magnitude of the vectors, and there are different forms of the norms also, and norm can be considered as a function. So this is a function, so where or it is always represented as either you can use two pipeline symbols. So your vector can be of can be placed within two single pipeline symbols, or you can even represent it this way. So now you can consider when it is a function. So what this function is doing, the norm function is doing is, so it is converting your n dimensional features to a scalar. So that is what, it is kind of a mapping from n dimensional feature space to your scalar to a scalar. So that is what the norm is, and norm has to satisfy certain properties, and the properties are, so always the norm of the vector should be greater than or equal to 0. So that is, it should be a positive number. So that there is a possibility of defining norm in different ways, but whatever the form you are using, it should satisfy all these properties. So the first property is, so the norm of the vector should be greater than or equal to 0, and if you consider any two vectors x and y, and if you add them and then if you compute the norm of that resultant addition vector, so it should be less than or equal to the addition of the norms of individual vectors. So it has to be satisfied by the norm. So if any function that satisfies all these conditions, then only you can call it as a norm, remember that. And now the third property is, so if you consider alpha as a scalar and x as a vector and alpha into x, so if you multiply your vector with a scalar and then apply the norm on that, it should be equal to taking the modulus of your scalar, absolute value of the scalar, and then multiply that with the norm of the vector. So both should result in the same value. So if any of the function that satisfies all these three constraints, then you can say that it is a norm. And there are of course multiple forms of the norms exist, but the popular norms are P norms, or you can call it as LP norms. So what are the different forms? We will discuss shortly. So these type of forms. So the norm, if it can be defined in using this formula, so then such norms are called as P norms or LP norms, and these LP norms are very, very popular. So now let us see what is the general form. So it is always represented, as I told you. So it is represented using two different, the vector is placed in between the pipeline symbols, either it can be a single pipeline or two pipeline symbols, and the subscript P indicates, so which type of norm you are going to identify or compute. So now it is defined as, so you are taking the individual element of your vector and you are applying you are considering the absolute value of every individual element, and you are taking the pth square of that, or so to the pth power of that individual element, and then you are taking the sum of all that elements, and then on the resultant summation you are applying the pth root. So that results in the pth norm. So let's see. So I'll clarify. I'll give you the details. So let x1 to xn are the individual elements of your vector, that is x is in the n dimensional space. So in that case, so if you consider this as a general formula for your pth norm, so then there is a possibility of defining. So these are the very popular forms of p norm, L1 norm, L2 norm and L infinity norm. So let's see what L1 norm is. So in case of the L1 norm, it's represented with the subscript 1. So in the case of wherever there is p in your representation, I am representing that with replacing that with a 1. That's what L1 norm is. So wherever there is a p, I am representing it as 1 means. So in that case your p becomes 1, that is, so there is no, 1th root is the same value, right. So that is, there is no need of this root, and to the power of 1 means again it results in the same value. So that means you are just taking the, in the L1 norm, you are just taking the summation of the absolute values of your original vector. So if you consider this, the same I have defined here. So the absolute value of the first element, absolute value of the second element, absolute value of the third element, so on and so forth, the absolute value of the last element. So that is how you can compute the L1 norm. So now let's see how do we identify the L2 norm. So wherever there is a p, so this is the general form, right, and because it's a L2 norm, so you just replace that p value with a 2. So wherever there is a p, just replace that with a p. So in that case you are raising the absolute value of every element to the power of 2, and then you are taking the summation of the individual elements squares, and then you are applying the square root, right. So the same thing I have defined here. So square root of the individual elements raised to the power of 2. So take the summation of that and then take a square root of that resultant value. So that gives you the L2 norm. And now let's see how to define L infinity norm. So in this case, so we'll remove the square root and we'll remove the power also. So instead what we do is we take the maximum value from the absolute value of the values of the given list of elements. So you just take the absolute values of every element, and whichever element is the maximum value, so that gives me the L infinity norm. So without considering the sign of these elements, you just pick the maximum element. So that gives me the L infinity norm. So this is how you can define the L1 norm, L2 norm and L infinity norm. So what does it say? The norm of the vector, it is basically used to identify the magnitude of the vector. So say for example, if this is the vector and what is the magnitude of that, and if this is the vector, what is the magnitude. So you cannot compare, right. So given these two vectors, simply you cannot compare them and tell, just like, so whether phi is greater than 2 or not, you can say that. But here you cannot say that on seeing the vectors. So how do you do that? You need to compute some norm. So you can either use L1 norm or L2 norm or L infinity norm, or you can even extend this and represent L3 norm, L4 norm, or to any p you can compute the p norms or the LP norms. So considering one of these norms, so you can compute your norms. And now consider the Euclidean norm. So whenever your p value is 2, so we are calling that as L2 norm, right. So that can be called as Euclidean norm also. And so one more interesting thing is, when your norm of the vector is 1, then such a vector is called as a normalized vector, or you can even call that as unit vector. So you are taking your given vector Ax and you are computing the norm, and if this norm value is 1, so in that case you are calling that vector as unit vector or the normalized vector. So now consider some examples. So given the vector, how do we solve? So this is a given vector, and let's see how do we compute the norm of each type of norms, L1 norm, L2 norm and L infinity norm. We'll see how do you compute. So this is how we can compute L1 norm. So what is L1 norm? So if you consider the general form, so wherever there is a p, you just have to replace that with 1, that's all, right. So in case of the L1 norm, so you are taking the absolute values of every element of your given vector and then you are just summing them up. So the absolute value of 2 is 2, then absolute value of 5, absolute value of minus 3 is 3, right. So, once you take the absolute values of all the individual elements of the original vector, so you just sum them up, that gives 10. So, that is how you can find L1 norm. So, now let us see what L2 norm is. So, L2 norm is, so you just take the squares of every element. So, 2 square, 5 square, 3 square, right. So, because I am applying square, I need not to take the absolute value. So, that is why I just ignored the absolute value, okay. So, then after taking the square of the individual elements, you just sum them up and then take the square root of that summation. So, that gives me the L2 norm. And now, let us see what L infinity norm is. So, L infinity norm is very easy actually. So, you just take the absolute value of every element and among those elements, whichever is maximum, that gives me the L infinity norm. So, if I ignore the sign of these elements 2, 5 and minus 3, so the maximum value is 5. So, that is how 5 is the L infinity norm for this vector x. So, that is how I can compute L1 norm, L2 norm, L infinity norm. Remember, you can even extend this p value to L3, L4 and so on, okay. But so, more important norms are L1, L2 and L infinity norms.